in order that they appear. Kelly Coulter, we will unmute you. And Kelly, are you able to give us a quick update on where you're from and what brought you to this webinar today?
I don't, she's not moving right now, so maybe.
Oh, maybe she's not on.
Well, I think so. We'll just go to Sydney. Millar?
Sydney, can you hear us?
Hello.
Hi, Sydney. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Great.
So, Sydney Miller, worked for many years with the Canadian Association for the Advancement of Women in Sport and Physical Activity, and still happy to be involved with them as a consultant, and yeah, just passionate about this area and continue to, you know, seek out learning opportunities and opportunities to discuss and share thoughts about the issues that girls and women confront in terms of sport and physical activity.
That's great, Sydney. Thanks for joining us today. That's great. And Miles. Miles, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Awesome. And we can hear you as well. So again, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to the webinar today.
Sure. I'm the Executive Director of Alberta Sport Development Center in Red Deer. And clearly I feel like coaching development is part of what we're supposed to be doing here. Plus I still coach, and I've coached women's volleyball for many years. So I'm interested.
Excellent. That's great, Miles. Thanks for joining us today. And Meredith Gardner, I can see you're on. Meredith, can you hear us?
I'm in a webinar for the next 40 minutes. But I have cleared March 8th.
Oh, Meredith? Maybe Meredith can't get through either. And so I know Meredith is with Freestyle Canada, and really glad to see you here, Meredith. And Kelly, if you get a chance to have audio with us, we'll look forward to hearing from you sometime later through the through our chat today. So now I'm going to bring us back around to Kendall, who's with us in Red Deer. So Kendall, maybe just to start, just some little introduction around about where you're at right now, and tell us a little bit about sort of the current positions. And I emphasize the plural of positions or duties that that you're up to these days. So Kendall, I'll hand it over to you for a bit.
Well, thanks, Vicki. Right now, I currently am employed with Hockey Alberta, and my title or position is the manager of female hockey, which is an exciting opportunity. It's the first time that we've had somebody in the office directly oversee the day-to-day operations and kind of the overall development of the female game in the province. So coming into it, I started in June. It was a little bit of a let's find out and see what this position's all about. So it's been a big learning experience for me for the last 8 months, trying to figure out what's going on in the province, where hockey's at right now, setting up some of the current elite structure as we made some big changes to it in the province last May, and then seeing where we need to take things and what are some of the offerings we need to give to our coaches, our athletes, and the people that are involved and the volunteers involved in our game every day.
That's great. And so you to do the work with Hockey Alberta, you're mostly in Red Deer these days, is that right?
Correct. We're based out of Red Deer.
Yeah, and I know you're involved with, when you and I first met, Kendall, there were some of the other pieces around some of the work you were doing at Olds College. Would you like to talk about that now, or maybe save that a wee bit later for the conversation?
Well, my position kind of with Olds really is just a coaching position. I'm a former player, and I've always had a big passion in the game, and when I realized that my playing career was going to end at some point, I turned my focus more towards coaching and being involved with the next generation of athletes coming up. So When I knew I was taking this position in Red Deer, I reached out to a friend here down the road in Olds and wanted to keep coaching and stay on the ice and stay involved with the kids. My background is that the last 7 years I have been coaching, so it was going to be tough for me to give it up and just take a purely administrative role on. So my position there is just more so being a coach, normal day-to-day, and just enjoying my experiences with the kids.
Yeah, and it certainly seems that by staying really in those coaching workstations, that it really brings to life from an administrative point of view the reality of what it's like for coaching within sport as well. So that must be a good fit for you.
It's been very positive. It allows me to, I always say kind of be in the trenches, is the metaphor that I use. I can see day to day what's going on, what coaches are faced with, as well as just being able to be out there and network and chat with the coaches and get involved with them on a really personal level, to really understand what needs they have in the province and what we can really help offer them, and really tailor what we want to do in the next 8 months here to the needs and the challenges that they're faced with.
Yeah, and I can hear in that as well, is that by being a coach in your current duties as well, if that influences your ability as an administrator or a decision maker with Hockey Alberta as a manager of female hockey, how those two might work together, being a coach and then being able to take up some of the feedback or experiences that you are hearing about in those hockey trenches. Does that fit as well?
Yep. No, I believe you've captured that pretty well.
Yeah. With no, that's because I think that's often when we talk about sort of sport around being able to advance the quality of sport experiences for athletes and coaches, is to keep in touch with what the real world, what it looks like, what it feels like. And so I can see you, excuse me, kind of dancing on both sides of the coin on that, for sure. Excuse me. When you talked about some of the competitive changes that you've been working with, maybe around a little bit more around the work that you've been doing in Hockey Alberta, kind of the kind of projects or work that you're doing in those different areas, just so we can understand a little bit more about what you're up to.
Well, the first couple big projects that I undertook there was a massive change to the elite structure last May, which meant that basically all the AAA leagues and everything came under Hockey Alberta. So now we run what's called the Alberta Female Hockey League, which has our AAA, our Midget Elite, and our Bantam Elite divisions. So 30 teams underneath it, and that's the first time that Hockey Alberta's ever run a league. So that was really the biggest project that I was faced with when I started in June. And then we just recently hosted Alberta Hockey Day, which is a recruitment and education event in January, which was getting the word out about female sport, getting girls into the sport, what are the benefits, and then educating those involved around it, the administrators, the coaches, and the parents, and just trying to do that, trying to give a transfer of knowledge there and leave a legacy. The main site was in Grand Prairie, and then we had some satellite events that really took hold of the concept and hosted their own event across the province. So it was really neat to see just that other communities were on board and were willing to promote and share the same message that we were on the benefits of female sport. Obviously, I'm a little selfish to the hockey side of things, but just the power of female sport and getting girls in the sport. So luckily now that those two big things are kind of off my plate, I'm able to focus a little bit more towards next year and offering some coach clinics and some player clinics, specifically geared towards the skill sets that players may need or that people may seem that they're lacking at the lower levels, and gearing some coaching clinics towards what are the specific things that female hockey players need, specifically on the hockey side, and then also on some of the stuff that you touch on as well, Vicki, with the emotional side of it and the psychological aspects that are involved in coaching female athletes.
Yeah, there's a lot that excuse me, there's a lot that you've just presented in there, and you mentioned your experience in Grand Prairie that you launched, and it really kind of took hold there. Can you say a little bit more, like what happened there that it really, you feel like it really got, well, it was embraced, it was, you really started to get rooted. What was going on in Grand Prairie that you think the things started?
Can you just repeat that last part, Vicki? You kind of broke up a little bit. Maybe it's my connection.
Oh, okay. No, that's all right. So when you were talking about some of your work getting launched in Grand Prairie, and it sounded to me that Grand Prairie was a bit of a special spot where some of the work was embraced. It really started getting rooted. If you could speak a little bit more to that, what did you sense going on in Grand Prairie that this kind of work was being received quite positively?
Well, the first one is just the kids and the parents and the coaches that were involved in the day. We're pretty excited to be a part of it. The information that we shared and we passed on with them was exciting. And the great thing with social media too is now that everything's so instantaneous, you can see it. So we're sitting in Grand Prairie and watching people. You just watch the hashtags and the taglines that you utilize, and people tweet at you and stuff like that. Just the traction that we got across the province from launching this province-wide Alberta Hockey Day, and it was the first event we ever ran, and we focused on female hockey this year, just with all the changes that we've made and the things that we're looking to do, and to create a better system for our girls. So it was pretty, for me, like I said, it was pretty exciting to see those other communities hop on board and share our message and celebrate with us throughout that day. It might not have just been the actual events in Grand Prairie, but just everything that occurred with that day, with everybody else hopping on board. There's a lot of people in the province that want to get girls in sport and that are pretty passionate about their experiences in minor hockey. So that was pretty exciting and pretty cool for me to see.
I bet that sounds like a great experience. Aaron has a question for you, Kendall.
Hi, Kendall. Any chance you could speak further to the collaboration you guys had during that hockey day? I know Alberta Golf was there with the She Swings, She Scores program. Any opportunities to maybe expand with that, with other sports or things like that, since that, you know, hockey is a major driver. It's a leader in the province. Any comments on that front?
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing that up, Aaron. I did kind of, that floated past my brain. We did partner with Alberta Golf, and they brought their She Swings, She Scores initiative up, which was a big hit. We partnered with Be Fit for Life out of Grand Prairie that offered multi-sport events for all of the athletes and all the girls that were there. The driver behind that was trying to get some different athletes in the building, getting those girls in the door, and then potentially trying hockey after that, as we had some try hockey events later in the afternoon. So selfishly, we wanted to get them in the door, but it was pretty neat to see just that different, the multi-sport aspect of it, and seeing girls enjoy other parts of being active versus just the hockey component of it. I'm personally a pretty big proponent of multi-sport. I did not start playing hockey until I was like in grade 8, I'm going to say. I grew up originally in Arizona, so I played every sport under the sun before that happened. And then hockey finally came calling, and that became my passion. So I understand the benefits of being a multi-sport athlete and the foundation that it provides you to maybe specialize in a sport later on. So when we look at doing the event in 2018, you know, maybe there's some things for us to grow on, and just approaching other partners and making it a larger event than just hockey.
Awesome, thank you.
That's great. So mention a bit of your other background, Kendall, about growing up in Arizona. We have a sense of the kinds of things that are keeping you busy right now. And how did you land up in Red Deer, Alberta, and be doing the kinds of things that you're doing, and to lead to this point around your current passions and the kind of work that you're doing? Maybe if you could just kind of like that, how did you end up here?
Well, I'll put everyone's mind at ease. My parents are both Canadian, so it was in my blood. And so that's, I mean, my dad played hockey, and so it was always kind of a big part of my household growing up. We'd watch the Stanley Cup playoffs every year. I was always an athlete. I played soccer, softball, swimming, anything else pretty much under the sun, so to speak. And then hockey finally took one day, and that's what I've followed ever since pretty much. I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship and play for 4 years in the NCAA in Minnesota, and then I moved to Calgary to continue my hockey passion, and I played for the Calgary Oval Extreme in 2008-2009 for a season. And then stuck around Calgary. I kind of enjoyed Alberta. I thought it was a pretty cool spot. And then I got into coaching and was offered a position in Banff and coached there for 4 years. And then coaching took me back down to the States for 2. And my family is a little bit closer to Alberta than Maine. So I moved back for my family's sake and then my husband's family as well. But I always knew that being on the administrative side of sport was more going to be a better fit for me. I didn't have the opportunity growing up in Arizona to do a lot with female hockey. There pretty much wasn't a team, and so you played boys hockey growing up. So just being able to help shape great experiences for these girls and just make the system a little bit better and to have a positive influence and create a great opportunity and a great experience for our younger girls growing up, so that basically at the end of the day the hope is that they continue a passion for sport and they get involved in coaching or being an administrator or an official or in some regards. Because unfortunately none of us are making the $90 million paycheck like a Sidney Crosby is. So it's about getting an education and really setting these girls up for a good start in life, and teaching them those life skills that are important, and then getting them back involved in the game later on.
Yeah, that's a wonderful tapestry that you've just painted out around, you know, how you've ended up here, and it always sort of warms my heart, so to speak, around many people that are working in sport, around those kinds of early positive experiences, including the challenges along the way that account for the work that you're doing right now. So, well, I know personally I feel pretty lucky to have you here in Alberta and the work you're doing. So it's great that we're doing this kind of stuff together. When you talk about the kinds of pieces that sport can provide girls and women and some of the work that you're doing, can you maybe be a little bit more specific around what are the kinds of needs or gaps that you're trying to address in this work?
The needs and gaps, that's a great question. And I've been doing a lot of digging, and I'm going to continue to do so with some of the coaches that we have in the province. And I really highlight in on coaches right now just because those are the people and the individuals that have the most effect day to day with these girls. And I think the more education that we could provide to that group working in the sport, the better experience that these girls are going to have and the better skills they're going to be set up with. So that's where I really hone in on those coaches. And it's just discovering what their challenges are right now. What do they feel they need more of? What can we assist them with? I know all the coaches in the world want more skills and drills. So is it providing more of a layout of here's the differences between female and male hockey? You know, I know one of the things that I'm seeing right now is that there's this myth around female hockey not being a physical sport just because there's no body contact. Well, if anybody's watched a U.S.-Canada hockey game, they know that's a pretty big lie. Those games are pretty rough, and just in the sense that there's a lot of physical contact and those girls battle and they put their hearts on the line every night. And it's just teaching those players how to do that in a safe environment growing up, not necessarily when they get to college, but starting at a younger age levels. Or is it just necessarily understanding what are some of the key motivators for females versus males? You know, there's a lot of, I'm putting old school in quotes, but nobody can see me. Coaches have kind of always been the old school way of yelling and teaching that way. Is there a better way, and how do the athletes these days respond? So a lot of the things that I'm trying to address are just what do our coaches feel that they need more resources with, and how do we provide it to them, and what's the best way to deliver it to them?
Yeah, that I think that's such an important quest around identifying those, what do coaches perceive, what some of their own needs are and what that might look like. Just before we jump to the next question, Meredith Gartner has been able to unmute herself, and Meredith, if you could, I'd love to have you introduce yourself to the group, as well as, again, a wee bit of how you're connected to this work as well.
Okay, and I have a bit of a cold. I'm not normally this sexy sounding.
Oh, yes, you are.
Oh, yeah. So I'm the sport development director for Freestyle Canada. I've been in this role for since 2009, very passionate in our sport. We have a lot of high-performing female athletes, but we have actually quite a low percentage of girls that move from learn to train to train to train, and then a really high attrition rate at learn to compete, right when they're knocking on the door of the national team. And we had reached out to Vicki, and she'd put together a coaching female athlete workshop, which we then sort of freestylified for our very active coaches. And we went across the country, and it had a profound impact. By the next year, I'd be going into team captains meetings, and the coaches would be having conversations about, well, if they made this decision, how would it socially impact their athletes or emotionally impact their athletes? So it was great to get those dialogues on the table, but there's a few really big things now. After that initial realm, it's like, how do we systematize those conversations and that knowledge? And we've been pushing pretty hard for the NCCP to get involved with the Coaching the Female Athlete workshop. So like making headway with concussions, we have a go-to that's free, it's online, it's boom. Everybody has to take it, no questions asked. So I just quickly wanted to touch on a few of our challenges in freestyle skiing. And that's that our coaches always tend to see the highest skilled athlete by stage, who is usually a boy. So they design every competition and all the terrain for 10% of the athletes. And we find that for most of the girls and up to 90% of our athletes, the terrain is actually not safe. Right? And it's a constant battle for us. The other thing is that girls are biologically very vulnerable, especially with knees, but we don't have the capacity to build scientific arguments and differences in technique for female athletes. And I would say that goes across skiing from what I've seen. And I think the last thing is really just what I touched on, communication. So how do we consistently and professionally, in an organized way, from a central point, communicate this information? And workshops and one-offs and anything you can do that's an event always goes super well. They're really well received. We just can't rely on our systems, on our clubs, to be able to put those events on the ground consistently. So I think the last thing I'd speak to, the last point was made, is our coaches aren't yellers, right? I'm a bit frustrated. Vicki knows from a session we did at Sport for Life, but there's a lot of energy being put into the toxic parent, the toxic volunteer coach, the screaming athletes. It's really not our problem. We just really need our coaches to understand some of the more concrete dynamics around meeting the social emotional needs of female athletes. So that's my cap.
Yeah. Thank you, Meredith. I'm so glad you spoke to some of those, and albeit coming at it from a freestyle lens, certainly when I hear about the issues around supporting biological maturation for female athletes and some of the growth and development challenges, largely around their knees and around anterior cruciate ligament injuries, that is a real phenomena, and that we actually have platforms and programs in place that work, and yet, to use your language around not only systematizing the conversation, but systematizing good information, good programs that are effective, that I can see being challenging. and then the ongoing issue of communication, and certainly that's something that in these, whether they're bi-monthly or regular conversations, and then to have the generosity of guests, like with Kendall being our first guest coming in to speak on these, creating a place where people can come and continue these conversations, particularly when you describe the impact of the workshops that you've had, and coaches starting to include in their language around discussions that what are the implications of certain decisions, not just on the physical or technical outcomes, but sometimes around the psychological, mental, or the social emotional pieces for athletes as well. So I don't know if at this point, just while we're sort of interim, are there any other comments from our other participants, Kelly, Mel's, or Sydney? Anybody, would they? Oh, Sydney, we've got, I'm going to unmute you, Sydney, because I see your hand up.
Hi.
Sydney, what would you like to add in?
Can you hear me okay?
Very well, yes.
Yeah, I was just, I'm actually in the process of preparing a webinar for OFIA, the Ontario PE Association, on kind of some new thinking around getting and keeping girls and young women active, and so I feel like I'm immersed in kind of these issues right now, even more so than usual. And I really kind of, what resonated, or what kind of appreciated, or sorry, you know, I think that one of the challenges is, you know, so Meredith, you mentioned that, you know, you have, you know, people setting courses for, you know, the 10% of the athletes, and that they're not safe for girls, and you know, there's kind of these, you know, issues, and I think, so pardon me for, I'm not going to be eloquent at all, because I'm really just kind of processing this as we go along. I think one of the things I've been struggling with is that, and Vicki, you and I, when we were talking in preparing for the Canadian Sport for Life Summit, we talked about this a little bit in terms of, like, what, you know, what is that path? And, you know, a lot of things that I see when we're you know, a lot of what's being implemented on the ground, especially at the lower kind of participation and early competition levels, is kind of this, you know, we have to dial things back for girls, and we have to, you know, oh, well, you know, we have to really focus on the social stuff because that's what's important for them, or we have to make it easier because the girls aren't as skilled, and it's kind of this dialing back of all of, you know, I think a lot of the quality of sport and a lot of the intentionality that we might see in some other programs, often for men or boys, that really thinks about, like, how do we build their performance and confidence and you know, achieve excellence. And, like, I just wonder, how do we do that education about those subtleties, right? And that it's not, you know, that there is this huge variety across girls, and we can't paint them all with that same paintbrush. And, you know, one of the things that I've been working on for this webinar is, you know, talking about girls, and we know girls have this kind of, you know, this innate need to be, you know, cohesive and build connections, you know, and maintain friendships and things like that. And that's often in conflict with, you know, some girls, they want, you know, and I think probably all girls, they want to be competitive and they want to achieve things and be successful. But those, you know, it kind of puts them, those two things put them in a values conflict. And so then the default is that the girls, you know, a lot of girls, not all, prioritize those friendships and that cohesion over the competition, and they say, oh, we don't like competition. So then that myth that girls don't like competition results in competition being removed from girls' programming. Because, oh, the girls don't like that, so we're not going to keep score, we're not going to do all these things. Instead of teaching girls that competition is healthy and normal and helping them navigate that conflict, right, so that they can still be friends and compete against each other. And so I don't know, that's kind of, you know, that's maybe a lot of things that I just brought up, but, you know, I think it's really that piece, or, you know, there's lots of pieces there, but I don't know. That's,
yeah, and you're right, Sydney. You did bring up a lot there, and just one piece. I think the friction that you've talked about around social cohesion, in contrast to a highly competitive, progressive environment, are not. We assume they are at odds with each other, and yet that is that classic feminine masculine construct that our society typically tries to pigeonhole attributes into one barrel or the other. And we often hear about female athletes in their early years where somehow their desire to improve themselves, their skill sets, the desire to get stuck in and be the best that they can be is interpreted in that male barrel, so to speak, the masculine. And I think this is going to be a piece for coaches, is that sport in general historically has been very firmly entrenched and built around a masculine construct. And so when we understand what comprehensive athlete development looks like, it is holistic and needs to not cherry pick on the physicality and the technical execution, but that all athletes need to then be buoyed in a strong psychological foundation, and even not just for female athletes, but for male athletes as well, that social emotional construct, because males too suffer from that pigeonholing construct as well. So, and again, we don't have answers to that, because this is where the engagement in the system is so important. I'll stop there because I see Miles, you've had your hand up. Miles, love to hear from you.
Just on the last point, I wish I could remember the author's name. She former national team volleyball and basketball player in the States. Went on to become an athletic director in Kansas, and she wrote a book about the gender differences, and basically she talks about it being a continuum. Doesn't matter what sex you are, there's a continuum between, you know, why you're in that sport, you know, social reasons versus, you know, one of the things she said was men compete to be accepted and women have to be accepted before they compete, things like that. But it's a great book. I wish I could remember to send you guys to go to check that out, but I forgot the name of the book.
Well, Miles, if you come across, I mean, if you do come across that title, please email us with that. Yeah. And go ahead. Yes, continue.
Yeah. So the only thing I might be too soon at this, but just kind of my job as a sport development, Alberta Sport Development Center. Interesting talking to Kendall, because I think I'm going to walk down to her office here right now, talking about you know, the coaching opportunities, and not every center is the same, but we have $3,000 that we've been trying to give away every year for coach education grants, and typically we have one person apply every year. Partly it's we're not getting the message out, but we need people to partner with to provide those resources.
Well, it sounds like, Miles, you're walking in the right direction.
Yeah.
Down to Kendall's office.
Yeah, so I think you know, I think the ASDC and the impact that they can have, as long as you felt through any collaborations, whether, you know, I don't know everyone's background on the call, but, you know, our LSOs and our PSOs and all those things, we have resources, and our mandate, I feel very strongly that part of what is missing in Central Alberta, where I'm supposed to be working, is coaching development. So we're on board. If anybody has an idea and you want to figure something out, come talk to us.
That's a wonderful invitation, Miles, and you're right. I think geographically you're situated in a place with the facilities and personnel that you have there. I think that's you'll get some really fruitful partnerships emerging. Certainly with Kendall to start with, for sure. Now, Kendall, I'm going to come back to you. Before I ask you the next question, did you have any thoughts about any of the comments or questions that have emerged, or that you'd like to comment on before I have another question for you?
No, I think you know, I'm a big believer in conversations like this always spark more information and more things that I need to maybe, well, selfishly we need to look at, but collectively as administrators in female sport, what are some of the key things across different sports, like Meredith highlighted on the freestyle side, differences in techniques, which I guess kind of goes in line with the game that the difference between male and female hockey. Communication is a governing body, and how that we need to be putting these things out and not just relying on our minor hockey associations, or for freestyle skiing, the club level. So I just think it's very interesting to come away with some key themes that, some key things that we're all kind of dealing with in our own realms.
Yeah.
And Miles, you're more than welcome to come find me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So Kendall, just kind of while we're talking, I've heard a lot about, you know, getting the coaches engaged and Meredith's positive impact experiences. Can you, just at this point, you know, what are some of your thoughts about getting some of your coaches engaged? And, you know, have you got some ideas of processes that you think you're going to float out there, either that you've garnered from feedback, or so where that whole coach engagement piece, what are you thinking about doing?
Well, I think I'm in a very special spot in terms of coaches being very open right now, and wanting to get the information. I've had a lot of people reach out to me looking for what we're exactly talking about. So I'm kind of maybe unique in that sense that people want the information, and there's certain leagues in the province that have asked to host seminars for every team or association in their league. One of the things that we're going to do is, now that we control that elite program with the Alberta Female Hockey League, is we're going to try and set up professional development opportunities twice a year for our 30-member coaches, and then potentially their assistant coaches as well. So we're in conversations with doing something and aligning it with our spring meeting in May, and offering some sort of a professional development opportunity for those coaches through the league, and then doing something as well in potentially February of next year. So those are two of the big things that we're looking at. And then just another thing that we're trying to figure out the magical solution for it is how to get former players and more females involved on the coaching side of it. Just so the majority of the teams right now in our province have male coaches, and how do we get more strong, positive female role models for those girls to interact with and to look up to.
Yeah, that is a, I think that I've heard that from other sports as well, about getting players to stay within the system, for sure. Those are, yeah, I like those. And as you're moving forward, again, thinking about, you know, getting into the sort of the hearts and minds of coaches, are there any obstacles that you've either been met with or that you anticipate facing?
I think really the obstacle potentially just could be when we get to a position to host some of these events that we're hoping to do next fall. Is just, it's during hockey season and everybody's busy and there's a million things going on and people don't want to travel and people are they're busy with their own team and that kind of stuff. So I just foresee that potentially being an obstacle. And I know Vicki, we've chatted about what's the best forum to host this, and then we agree that there's that face-to-face component and that conversation and meeting people versus that online format. So it's just overcoming those obstacles, and how do we do that? Is it just offering it at different times where hockey season isn't as busy, or just say, hey, this is what we're going to do. Hopefully it works for you guys. So that's the biggest thing I see as being one of my obstacles for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And are there indicators right now? I hear you talking about people being very open to this right now. What are some of the things that you've experienced, since taking on this position that you think are either shaping up nicely, or that you're getting some kind of good vibes from, that you're heading down the right track? What's been going on, the kinds of
That's a great question. And I actually just had this conversation with somebody yesterday, just in terms of what does success mean for us, and what are some of the key indicators moving forward.
Okay.
So it's something that's been rattling around in my brain. But how do I know things are going in a positive direction? Just right now, I think it might be too early to really give you a good answer on that. I'm starting to have a lot of conversations with people about the changes that have been made, the direction we're heading in. The biggest thing has been building that relationship and kind of, again, getting in the trenches there and just understanding the needs of our members here have kind of really been the biggest things for me. And I think it might take me another couple months to get you a good answer on that, Vicki.
And I would, Kendall, I would encourage you to think that the answer you gave is pretty darn good, especially with grounding this in building relationships with the people you want to have the greatest impact with. You are trying to be, you're in a position of servitude, and that takes time to get to know the people, to get to know what they need. So I would not dismiss that metric of relationship building as any less of a key performance indicator than the attendance at a particular workshop. So that's just sort of an offer up for you. I think it's important that we value the relationship and conversation side of things that we do in this work. Other than that, I think we become very outcome driven at the expense of trusting, respectful process. That's just kind of my 2 bits on there. So I think you can upgrade the relationship building. Aaron's got a question.
Well, it's more of a comment from Meredith, and she talks about how they have hosted some workshops around certain events, and may have some strategies about engaging people. So I'll let her have the floor, and she can speak a little further to it. Thanks, Meredith.
Okay, yeah, what we have found has been really successful is going in and doing workshops at events, right? So after the day is done and the team captains meeting's done, we just hold everybody and give them a bit of food and keep them in the room for a few hours, and they still get away in time for their real dinner or their evening, but that's been an incredibly successful model for us.
So essentially, you got everybody in one spot already for an event. Let's tack on some PD, just a few hours, don't wear anybody out. Seems like a really effective strategy from my end.
Yeah, it's great, and very interactive sessions. Again, our coaches don't like to sit still for too long. And I would say the other thing is we went to the PSOs and we said, okay, you guys pick the event, but you're going to drive all your coaches to make sure that they're there. And that was a really effective partnership.
Excellent. Thank you.
That's great, Meredith. Yeah.
And if everybody can look to the question box.
I don't think they can all see it.
Okay, maybe I'll reply. I'll reply, and then everybody will be able to see it. Miles found the book for us. And everybody should be able to see it now.
Thanks, Miles. That's gender and competition, how men and women approach work and play differently. That's awesome. Thank you for that, Miles. That was quick detective work to get that one up. That's great. So I'm mindful of time. We're coming into our sort of final 10 minutes here, just over 10 minutes. Kendall, based on kind of where the conversation is going, maybe it is February 2017. If we were to have this conversation, let's say a year from now, what are the kinds of things that you would like to be talking about, 1 year from now, or even maybe by the fall? What are the kinds of pieces you'd like to say that you're either talking about differently or doing differently?
Oh, wow, that's a loaded question, I feel like. That might be something I have to get back to you on as well. I think the biggest thing for me on the plate is promoting this and getting this out there. I just wrote out a bunch of different projects I wanna create aside from the coaching clinics. It's just some sort of a coach resource manual as well. That welcome to the world of coaching. Here's where you can go to gather more resources. What are some of the things you should be thinking about? We want to create some parent education programs and host that, have that on our website. What are some of partner with some of the other people that are doing work in those fields and look at that. So really, at the end of the day, this time next year, I would love to be talking about just tweaks and things to make things better, and how we can maybe tap into some relationships with other sport groups, and what are some of the issues that they're addressing, and how can we pool our resources to make things even better. I hope those are the conversations we can have in February 2018. But I think I've got some work on my plate that I have to get off, and including these coaching clinics and hosting new recruitment events, and what's the best way to get more girls in the sport. Those are some of the things that I'm focused on, and just growing and tweaking those things, I hope, is what we talk about next year.
Yeah. And during that conversation piece right there, Meredith, you put into the question box. Meredith, could I just ask you to, I'm going to unmute you here. Could you just speak to that comment you made, Meredith?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm really hoping our organization with our inclusion workshop will use this strategy. I mean, the whole world is going to be watching freestyle skiing, hockey, snowboarding, speed skating, our Winter Olympic events with our amateur athletes next year in February. So let's put some key messages on the table, because I find that it's great to have all of these nice commercials that, oh, everybody should get to play and let's get girls playing, but let's use all those opportunities as sports organizations to put real strategies and messages on the table.
Yeah. And that's a great thing you bring up, Meredith. And we're pretty fortunate here in Alberta that the national women's team gets centralized here in Calgary and plays an entire season starting from August up until February in the games. So I'm going to be partnering with Hockey Canada in terms of working, hosting recruitment events, hosting some of these coaches clinics in conjunction with some of the games that the national team will be playing, and hopefully utilizing some of those athletes to do exactly what you're saying, like get that messaging out and to be those positive role models in those communities like Medicine Hat and some of the other outlying communities that we maybe don't necessarily get to because their female hockey program isn't large yet, and how do we grow that out in those areas. So that's a great point you bring up. Thank you.
That is a good point, Meredith.
And training the athletes, or just giving them the messages for the national stars when they're being interviewed leading up.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And Meredith, just to ask you the question, when you talk about, I agree that it's an opportunity for Olympians to provide those messages, what would you think about a unified message across Olympians from different sports, particularly for girls and women?
I would say if you could partner with the COC and get that going now, that would be incredible. And I think it would be really powerful.
I do too. I think it really talks about, again, it reduces the territorialism around one specific sport. But if we're really doing this because of the ultimate lifelong impact of quality sport within a girl's life, and how that impacts and transfers to the rest of her life. I think that's where common messaging across sports could have certainly could have some traction. I don't know what that could be. I'm not a marketing or a branding person, but I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. Okay, so Kendall, how would you like to close off comments here before we shut her down?
I have a question if you need somewhere to go.
Yeah, throw in your question, Aaron.
This is a personal one. So I work with two, want to call them elite baseball players, which are female in Alberta. They're invited to on the junior national tryout team with Baseball Canada, very strong, and I work with them privately. And the conversations we have always go back to, and it's been mentioned here today, about as they move on, their coach at the provincial level is quite the yeller, and they always reach out to me on how to deal with that, and I'm really, I don't know. I mean, I try to give them advice, but really I've never been in that position as a female with a male coach, and I'm really stuck. So I'm reaching out to the group here today, and it's on a personal side, is how would I provide them strategies on to dealing with that certain yeller coach. Any help? If you want to be unmuted, just put it in, enter into the chat, and I will be able to unmute you.
Oh, Sydney?
Well,
Sydney
have they spoken to the coach about that him yelling at them is not effective and they don't like it?
Certainly, I think they have. It's almost like in a position where they might be in the minority. They don't talk to the other girls because it's more of a team where they come together. They play in their own kind of municipalities, then they come together at this other team, and I don't think they essentially understand how all the other girls feel.
Well, I think in terms of...
Sorry, go ahead.
In terms of providing feedback, one of the most effective things I've seen lately, I don't know if Vicki or Meredith or if others were at the Sport for Life conference, but I can't remember which session it was, but it was this during one of the plenaries, and the group was given a task of reading, lines of words, so it was colors, maybe 20 items, that said like red, blue, yellow, green, purple, blue, green, yellow, doing this task, and the keynote speaker timed us. And then he put it up again, and all of the colors of the words were off of what it said, and we had to complete the task reading the actual color, not the word. And so we did, we did it again. It took us way longer to complete that task. And so he said that for, athletes, that's what it's like to have all this kind of this barrage of yelling, and I'm sure that in a situation with your athletes, there's probably yelling at different times and for different reasons, but something like that might be a good way for them to kind of say, this is how it feels and the impact on our performance when you're just yelling at us, and the keynote speaker was talking about how, basically a lot of athletes, they just shut down and stop listening to the coach in that situation. And I mean, he was talking about younger athletes. I'm guessing maybe if I'm assuming it's a coach that's maybe not as tuned into all of the psychosocial factors that impact his athletes. So something like that that's a bit more kind of focused and task-oriented and not about emotions might kind of disrupt his thinking and get him to think a little bit more about the effectiveness of that style.
Okay, thank you.
Vicki, were you there?
Yes, that was John O'Sullivan's. I hear you. Yeah, it just gets noisy, and then nothing of quality gets done.
Yeah.
I think Awesome.
Miles?
Thank you.
Thanks, Sid.
Miles also had his hand up.
Yeah, so coached a long time and did some coach education, but I guess my question is, does the club team have a coach development program? Is there evaluations from someone other than the parents? Is there a mentor? Does the coach have a mentor? And I look at it and I go, what's the coach? I see it all the time. And I always say to myself, I hope that's not me. I don't think it is, but you know, coaches get angry, I think sometimes because they don't know what else to do. Like, they don't have another response. They don't have a tactical response. It's just, you know, it's not good enough. I also had a coach, a professional coach. I was his assistant, and I had to explain the concept of regression to the mean to him, that his feedback, he believed quite strongly that when he yelled at the team, they did better. He tended to yell at them after they did something poorly, so regression to mean would suggest that it was going to get better anyway, regardless of what you said. And then if they ever did something good, he praised them. And of course, they did something above normal, so he would praise them. And then of course, regression to the mean meant that the next contact wasn't as good. So that was his self-affirmation that he had to yell because they seemed to respond, but it was purely a statistical anomaly that he didn't understand. But I feel like coaches, and I had a parent come up to me and shook my hand and said, hey, Miles, you know, I just think you're a fantastic coach, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, but why do you do this? So he just totally disarmed me. And I mean, this was 20 years ago, and he made an impact on me by him, first of all, disarming me. But I think the biggest thing, does a coach have a mentor, and are they really exploring why they're feeling that way? Is it because of their ego, because they don't know what else to say, or they're just lunatic? If they're a lunatic, they shouldn't be coaching.
Yeah. Thank you for
Absolutely,
that.
thanks.
Yeah, those are, thank you for putting that in, Aaron. It's always important to get those real world examples. Okay, I'm mindful of time. So Kendall, I am so grateful for your time and sharing today. Is there a way, if people would like to reach out or stay connected with you, Kendall, that people know how to get a hold of you?
Yeah, the easiest way without having to scribble down my email address right now is on our Hockey Alberta website. We have a staff contact list. So if you went all the way to the bottom of the webpage, it says staff contacts, and then I'd be on there. But otherwise, K Newell, my last name, so Kendall and then Newell, Newell, at hockeyalberta.ca. Or if you call the office, you'd be able to get a hold of me as well. But I want to say thank you, Vicki, for allowing me to be a part of this today. It's been really beneficial for me as well to hear some of the comments from the rest of the members on this conversation.
That's awesome. You know, it's great, and thank you for building the community here in Alberta. It's great, and I know Meredith had to sign off, but thanks for coming in, Meredith. And the last thing, just to let you know, because I know some of the topics around parents, at our next LTAD lunch, which is March the 1st, again noon to 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, we have Dr. Camilla Knight coming to us from Swansea University in the UK to share with us around her promoting positive parents. And we've been tackling this in our last few LTAD lunches, so I'm delighted that she'll be able to join us. So please feel free to join us at that point and bring any of your friends and colleagues along to that. So again, thanks to Tyler back at headquarters, Sport for Life in Victoria. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you to Aaron and Robin for helping make a really smooth session, and look forward to staying connected and continuing this really important conversation around girls, women in sport. Enjoy the rest of the day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Vicki.
Bye-bye.